uh, we are trying to press that as the mechanism, as university are going to block ChatGPT Wi-Fi because we don't want to make it as if the universities are encouraging their students to use ChatGPT. As we have said, that the house would like to ban the use of large language models such as ChatGPT in the. So our task is that our aim is university should not endorse nor encourage the use of GPTs in universities as a whole. So by giving this aim, we are also giving the burden of proof to government. So what is our burden of proof? Uh, our burden of proof is that we have to prove that GPT is harmful for university students in the long run and in their studies. So because of this, we will go right into uh, this argument is universities have principle of application to ban the use of ChatGPT among university students as a whole. Why is this true? The first reason is ChatGPT goes against the main purpose of the university. So in in this in this reason, would like to ask ourselves what is the main purpose of a the main purpose of university is to teach a student how to be economist, an accountant, a lawyer, a doctor, etc. Why is this important? Because to qualify these professionals need to have a diploma or degree or master's from the university. So if we are using ChatGPT, it would absolutely, without the main purpose of a university to certificate you as a person who can do something in the field you are in. So move on to the second reason why this argument is true. That university students are neglecting their responsibilities by using ChatGPT. So it's the responsibilities of students. Uh, student is to learn, is to learn everything necessary skill that they need. So why in this instance, as using ChatGPT goes against the responsibilities of students? We are taking an example of science mostly because we are taking GPT to make the assignments as a whole. You can just
Excuse me, I'm really sorry to interrupt. Adam, your connection is really slow, so your voice is lagging.
uh,
I've paused the timer.
can we pause? Can we pause? Can we get another
Yes.
computer? Another wait. I want to ask. Do I have to begin from that, or do I have to?
No,
Do I have to
just
begin from
fix
the
your
start,
internet.
or
Just fix your internet and then you can start from where you left off. Could you do something about the choppy
because if
audio?
we have to begin from the start, I want to enter the chat from another way.
Yeah, do that.
The wonders of online competitions.
More like IU Wi-Fi, I think.
Aduh.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
I
Okay.
think your video is so much better now. I would prefer it if you were to start from the beginning because, like, I, for the most part, did not catch a lot of stuff. And I'm sure the audio becomes better.
Project ni boleh tolong ambil. I need to take another room. No, cannot. No. Alright. Boleh. Sorry for the inconvenience. I want to ask again whether I have to start. Alright, thank you.
Yeah.
So again, as the government, thank you IBIT to the speaker. Thank you IBIT to the judge. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So today's our government side is bringing a motion that this house wants to ban the use of large language models such as ChatGPT in universities. For context, students all around the world are abusing the use of ChatGPT. This reality manifests by them to have to rely on it for every single assignment and every single task, like learning a topic or etc. So the government wants to bring the definition today as universities, as in all universities. So this house would like to ban the use of language models such as ChatGPT in all universities, whether it is public and private. So what is the mechanism that the government is proposing? We are proposing that the government should, we are proposing that the universities should block ChatGPT from their website of the student Wi-Fi. Meaning if they go into the websites using student Wi-Fi, it will be blocked on their sites. So if they are using their mobile data, then it is up to them. But for the purposes of today's mechanism, we are trying to limit the use of ChatGPT by closing the access in student Wi-Fi's. And why is this? Because our aim is that universities should not endorse nor encourage the use of ChatGPT in universities. With this aim, we are bringing the burden of proof that we have to prove that ChatGPT is harmful for university students as a whole. So moving on to our argument. Our first argument will be universities have a principal obligation to ban the use of ChatGPT among university students. And why it is true? The first reason is because ChatGPT goes against the main purpose of a university. And what is the main purpose of a university? To teach a student how to be a reliable member of the society, such as an economist, an accountant, a lawyer, a doctor, and etc. And the qualifications of these fields are given by the university, such as by the virtue of diplomas, degrees, masters, and etc. So it goes against the main purpose of the university, because if they use ChatGPT, then they would not be able to teach a student effectively. Reason number 2 is university students are neglecting their responsibilities by using ChatGPT. In what instances do students use ChatGPT? For assignments mostly, but also for explanations, examples, and illustrations, summaries of principles and doctrines. And why is this bad? Because ChatGPT is not accurate. The algorithm of GPT means it doesn't follow the discipline of a field. For example, in Islamic studies, I read to the speaker that is asking POI.
It's okay. You can continue.
All right. The algorithm of ChatGPT means it doesn't follow the discipline of field. For example, in Islamic studies, where you should follow certain rules to avoid deviant information and deviant view of scholars, such as Shiite sites, for a study that strictly wants to talk about Sunnah wal Jama'ah. But because the algorithm doesn't cater to these disciplines, doesn't cater to your ability to distinguish, to filter, it doesn't filter, because ChatGPT's algorithm is a summarizing, a language model, a learning language model app that would summarize everything without following the right discipline of a field. So because of this, it will lead to inaccuracies. So the third reason why is this true is because universities have a duty to cater to the education of their students. Because to be honest, students paid for their tuition fees, and when they are paying for their students' fees, the government, the universities have the responsibility to ensure that they have a quality education. And how can they have this quality education? They must focus on their responsibilities, and they must try to
POI?
yes, I beat to the
So you
speaker.
say that they have an obligation to ensure they have quality education. These students are still learning from lecturers. It's not like they're suddenly depending fully on large language models to learn everything that they learn.
The huge bulk of your education is assignments. Yes, you learn from your lecturers, but you are also learning when you are doing assignments. And when you use ChatGPT, you are not doing your assignments, and this will again make your education very bad. So I would continue. Large part of their responsibilities is centered on student welfare. For example, they need to teach the students the necessary skills of a student, such as research skills. In law, for example, you must be able to bring out into court authorities according to their importance to the case as a whole. So you must know what is a binding precedent and a persuasive evidence. And you have to know within persuasive precedents also, on which countries does Malaysian law prefer more. For example, in the case of somnambulism, you cannot take an example from Canada, because our penal code is not from Canada. Our penal code is from India. So you have to take the case of Arma Malipapati. So that is why we are saying that if we use ChatGPT, it doesn't necessarily cater to the disciplines of a field, and this is a duty that the universities have to cater. And if they doesn't cater to this, they are going against their duties as a whole. And because of these three reasons under our argument, we are saying this house wants to ban the use of language models, for example, ChatGPT, in the universities as a whole. I rest my case as the government. Thank you.
I thank the Prime Minister for that speech. I'd like to now invite the Leader of Opposition to hear.
Am I?
Okay, right. Thank you to our first speaker. Now, please welcome the first speaker of the opposition, Brother Wafi Izzuddin, to open the case for their side. Please welcome.
Okay. Am I audible? Can you guys hear my voice clearly? Okay, sure. Okay, thank you. So I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Mr. Speaker, understanding on how the government understand how large language models work is absolutely absurd because, okay, let's say it is true, that is how large language models work, but their mechanism is not actually help the or understanding the purpose of the university itself, because the university, as they say before, the universities have to cater the usage of have to cater the quality of educations, and they also mention numerously about how the ChatGPT is not following the standard of the certain academic sources. So first, I will rebut many of their argument. First, their mechanism. We believe that by banning only ChatGPT on campus Wi-Fi only, in the reason of because they don't want to endorse the usage of ChatGPT because they are not accurate, is basically is opposing or not even answering the purpose, because the student can easily using Google, and we believe that their mechanism is very surface and very illogical, because basically not ChatGPT, large language models, because basically large language models works not similarly but closely just like how search engine works, and they do not. Probably the government does not even understand how search engine works, because if they cater on how the academic research paper works, and because of the ChatGPT, it is not aligned with how the academic works, the Googles will also answering the same, will giving the same answer as ChatGPT. And before that, I will give you the clarification of how large language models. Wait a second. I will give you the definition of large language models work. Large language models is actually, or LLM, I will simplify that. Wait a second. Can be described as an advanced computer program that are really good at understanding and generating human-like text. Basically, if I ask the question from the ChatGPT, it will give me answer. I will if I answered if I question or I giving the input prompts from the Googles, it will give the answer, but the answer would be different. Why? Because the interaction between the human and the ChatGPT, and the interaction between Google and the human is different. Okay, why? Because the ChatGPT is to interact like a human-like text. And they are designed to process. No, I don't take API currently. They are designed to process and analyze large amount of information, just like how Google's work. But the problem right now is, Mr. Speaker, we believe that the government's problem is actually, and their mechanism is not solving their own problem.
Right.
Because okay, sure.
You are saying yourself that ChatGPT is a human-like generating process. So how can you equate ChatGPT with search engines when you are saying yourself it is like a human generating processes? So your argument doesn't go.
Okay, I understand that.
Intended.
But the problem is right now you are saying the information is what you are concerning, not how the human-like generating context that you are concerning. The human-like generating context help more the human to understand the information that was given. Okay, they can provide information just like how Google, but the problem but the benefits of it is help you write. They help you write better and even engage in the conversation. Like this model has been trained on a massive amount of text data, which allows them to understand the language pattern and generate coherent and contextually relevant response. And why we believe why the mechanism of the government is especially absurd, because first, the question that is going to ask by the human towards the ChatGPT is what the ChatGPT is going to give. If I answer, my question would be, I am a debater, provide me an arguments in the opposition sides for this motion. For this motion, I will text this motion. It will give in the context of a debater, but Google cannot provide that, and that is the main difference of large language models. And okay, I'm not talking. Okay, and also the problem right now is what universities want. we cannot deny the universities want the research they want to produce a product which is the human itself, a very good product to be an accountant or academician or a lawyer. But we live in a postmodernism era. Regardless, even if you are a lawyer in the future, you are still going to use ChatGPT in the workplace. So regardless, the adaptation of technology is happening in this era. So in this context, and how can we cannot understand how can universities are not allowing them, but when you go outside to the world, you can use that. And that is why we think that the mechanism provided by the government is not clear. So the counter mechanism is, we believe like this: we are not going to ban, but however, we will encourage the student to use these models in wise and ethical way. We will provide them on how to use ChatGPT properly. We will provide them how to use ChatGPT aligned with how the academic context work with that Islamic Sharia thingy and the penal codes, yada yada yada. If ChatGPT cannot provide that, then they cannot provide that. You have to ask your lecturers, you have to refer to the books on your academic materials. So if ChatGPT cannot provide, then they cannot provide. Okay. Moving to my argument, there is many arguments, but I don't have time. So the main argument in this context is to enhancing the efficiency and the productivity. And why we think it is important? Because the use of large language models allows students and researchers to efficiently process and analyze vast amount of information. It can saving them valuable time and resources. And why is this good? Because this improved efficiency leads to increased productivity, enabling students and researchers to accomplish many things with very limited time frames, because we have deadlines, Mr. Speaker. For example, in CFS, I have only 1 week to submit 2,500 essays for my political science. So ChatGPT can help me, but it's not answering, it's not doing my job. It's helping me submitting or finishing my job. So this promotes I consider a dynamic learning and research environment, and innovation and etc. So and my second argument, I believe that the support of students for students with learning differences, providing support for students with learning differences, I believe is essential, because we want an inclusivity in education. We want to ensure the equal access to resources and opportunities. In this world, we have a digital divide. Or I can say that one guy can access to many things online compared to others because the lack of knowledge. But ChatGPT can solve that problem. The large language models offer a personalized assistant, just like how I mentioned about how ChatGPT works, catering to the specific needs of the student with learning differences. This I think this supports and promotes more. Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. I'm so sorry. Okay. Yeah. And for that, I am opposed. Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
Thank you, Leader of Opposition, for that speech. I'd just like to remind everybody to please keep track of the time. Yeah, cool. I do believe that the chairperson is the one who's doing the announcements. So I think
Yes.
go for it.
All right. I'm sorry. All right. I would like to thank Brother Wafi Zudin for their speech. Now, I will call upon the second speaker of the government, Brother Naufal, to continue the debate for their side. Please welcome.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, you
Yes.
All right. Sorry, I can't on my cam. I'm using a device that doesn't have a camera. Okay. Hold on. Okay. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Chair, I'm gonna structure my speech in 3 ways, right? 4 ways. First, I'm gonna respond to the rebuttals that was brought by the first speaker on their side. Secondly, I'm gonna rebut their countermeasure and rebut their arguments. And then lastly, I'm gonna bring in one argument, which is on how we want to reduce the overall performance, how this will reduce, by not doing this, it would reduce the overall performance and quality of the university, right? But first, let's start with responding to their rebuttals, right? So their main rebuttal that was brought by their first speaker was based on our mechanism, right? He said that our mechanism doesn't work because we can still use Google, right? He tried to explain how Google is an alternative to ChatGPT by within like the same minute explain to you why Google is like completely different by ChatGPT. And this was also mentioned in POI by my first speaker. And yeah, he just said that Google can answer specific character, which therefore proves that ChatGPT is far superior and far better alternative, even considering the fact that if you were to use Google, you'd have to read through every single article for you to get the information you want. Whereas in ChatGPT, it would just give you a summary on like the information you want. And we've already told you why we much prefer you going through the articles them yourself rather than getting a summarized version based on how they lacks the discipline that is required within the given field, right? As mentioned by my first speaker. Now, what was their countermeasure, right? Their countermeasure was to teach them how to use ChatGPT, or in other words, they want to try to exploit ChatGPT to like further exacerbate the situation, right? And notice how they didn't even respond to the impacts or harms that we brought. Instead, they just said, oh, no, if you use it correctly, then everything should be fine, right? No, we tell you that is not the case, right? Because first of all, they didn't explain how exactly it's likely for you to teach them how to use ChatGPT, especially considering the fact that ChatGPT is an international private organization. It's a private product, right? It is not something that's created by university students or not created by university lecturers. There is no expert there to teach them how to use ChatGPT. Now, secondly, right, we tell you that yeah, by further like when you enable it, when you encourage this ChatGPT, this is when all of the problems that we've told you will be widespread, right? Now, instead of people who don't want to use ChatGPT, the honest students, right? Now they all suddenly are forced to learn how to use ChatGPT and have to use it, right? Now, the only argument that he brought was about increasing efficiency, right? And he said that like his problem was that, oh, he has deadlines, so like yeah, I don't have time to do this, right? Check. Understand these are full-time students, right? It's not something that's unusual for this amount of workload to be brought onto these students. Universities have been brought up for multiple decades, right? And we tell you that it's been possible in the past, so why not now, right? Just because you think it's upsetting doesn't give you the right for you to take a shortcut, right? Now, so therefore, I'm going to move on with my only argument, right?
Okay.
About how it reduces the overall performance and quality of the university. But before that, sure, POI.
You say that the students are using ChatGPT to cut corners, but language summarizers such as Quillbot have existed for far longer than this have existed. So do engage on that.
Okay, yeah. I said cut corners because you're summarizing. If you're not reading and you're just looking for a summary, that's cutting a corner, bro. Okay, anyways, moving on my argument, right? So 3 layers to this argument. First layer, quality of university is mostly dictated by the quality of students produced. So what does this mean, right? Firstly, the reputation of a university is based on the number of students that get employed by the end of their study period, right? That means after they graduate. So when people know the majority of digital analysts in the workforce are actually UTM graduates, they are more likely to want to go to UTM as a whole, right? And this is the exact reason that I went to UIA to study law, right? Now, secondly, people associate their successes, the university success, people associate the successes of other people back to their university. So this is when people who people usually like to study or research about the background of the outliers in a given society. And this means whether they became a politician or whether they became like a chief justice or some other big shot individual, right? And we know this when we look at Mahathir, Anwar Ibrahim, Muhyiddin Yassin, they were all UM graduates, right? So this is when it links to the overall quality of UM as a university as a whole, right? So why exactly is this important? Because if top university graduates suddenly, the graduates of top universities stop reaching that same level of achievements, the public opinion is that the university has reduced in quality. And this stained reputation will then lead to main effects, right? Firstly, there'll be less student applicants because then the university will be forced to accept lesser quality students than they are used to accepting. Now, this looks like having to take in more students who maybe got 6 A's during the SPM instead of their usual 10 A requirement, right? Now, secondly, this would then lead to less quality lecturers who would be applying or would be enforced, right? Because when there's a drop in applicants, that means there'll be a drop in funding. When there's a drop in funding, that means they'll have to drop the overall salary. And this would straight away would misdirect the other quality lecturers to go to other universities elsewhere. Now, second layer, the true capabilities and comprehension of the students are hidden until it's too late, right? Now, this looks like when lecturers cannot help a student who look like they understand a topic completely. So when we've already told you in what instances that these students would be using ChatGPT, right? This looks like using it especially for assignments. understand that assignments are given to measure the overall understanding of a student, the overall comprehension of a student regarding the content, regarding the
POI?
syllabus, right? So therefore, when they can perform, okay, before 6, yeah, sure.
What do you think about the existence of the plagiarism checker, as it can answer the problem of plagiarism and yeah,
Okay,
something like that?
I understand what you're saying, right? Because obviously there are plagiarisms checkers enforced, right, to check for ChatGPT. But we tell you that people have, first of all, people have learned to avoid this system, right? There are other ways for you to like bypass these checking mechanisms. But secondly, you can't expect every single lecturer to go through, like, have to go through a checker for every one of their students. Because even one class has like 50 students, and you have like multiple classes. For every single assignment, you want them to go through how many hours and time would that take for these lecturers as a whole? Why not just get rid of ChatGPT as a whole, right? Now, so when they can perform the assignment very well, lecturers are likely to think or under the assumption that the students understand the syllabus, right? However, when the lecturer believes the students are capable of comprehending the topic, they are less likely to conduct extra classes or workshops to help increase or to help teach more about the assignment or teach more about the subject, right? So the second layer, right, the last part is that their true capabilities of the student will only reveal itself once it's too late. And we see this particularly when it comes to exams, right? Because you're not allowed electronics during the exams. This is when you're forced to rely on your own knowledge, your own capabilities to answer these papers. And this is where the students will completely drop and the lecturers are left wondering why. So for all those reasons, we tell you that ChatGPT has to be blocked. Never been proud to propose.
Curious? All right. Thank you, Brother Naufal. Now I call upon the second speaker of the opposition, Sister Alia Fatihah, to continue the case for their side. Please welcome.
So can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. So first of all, the Deputy Prime Minister did say something quite interesting earlier. This is what I understood from what you guys have been talking about what the government side have been talking about. See, I acknowledge your paranoia on the potential impact of how ChatGPT can like affect the quality of education, but like it's also like essential to view these large language models as like a tool rather than like a replacement for traditional education. When used responsibly, okay, it can serve as like a valuable resource. So moving on, I would like to get to my point, which is, well, which side wait. All right. Our side, it saves more time. And let me tell you why I think like this is important, okay? University students, they often like face numerous commitments outside of their academic work. So they're facing demanding schedules, balancing academics, extracurricular activities, part-time jobs, and there's such a thing as personal commitments. So they can use the saved time to like engage in other activities and pursue personal interests, or simply like have moments of relaxation and self-care. Doesn't this sound like a way healthier work life, or in this case, study life balance? In this way, it like reduces stress and like it enhances overall well-being. And in a way, this like increases efficiency because like information and answers are immediately provided, eliminating the need for students to spend like excessive time searching for answers themselves. Now, I would like to suggest a few alternatives on how large language models can be used without affecting academic credibility. So large language models, it can be used as for references and inspiration. So large language models, they can like gather students, they can gather info and ideas and insights from large language models and like utilize their own critical thinking and creativity to develop a more original work. So for an example, a student is studying literature, and they can consult these large language models for analysis and interpretations of like a particular novel. But then they can like formulate their own technique, their own unique analysis based on like the knowledge that they got from these large language models. And also, in a way, we can like incorporate more research towards what we got from these large language models. So you know, like,
Why?
Yes.
Again, the government is asking, how do you want to regulate this? You are saying that we can do this, we can do that, but how do you want to regulate?
How do we want to regulate? I think I will leave that to our whip. All right. Moving on. Or was I think I was on incorporating more researches. Yes. So students, they can like use more research on the infos they got from large language models. They can strengthen their arguments and support their claims by conducting more research, like collect data from more credible sources like scholarly articles, books, legitimate websites, journals, and such. But we're not telling you to like depend fully on ChatGPT. We can use Chat on large language models in general. They can provide us an outline, and from there we can work from there on our own. That's what we're suggesting. So what we're trying to say is like, even if students use ChatGPT on a daily basis, it'll help them get their job done. And like that's important because it affects their overall marks. And like, isn't this in a way like helping students academic progress at a much faster rate? Like, yeah, I mean, the Deputy Prime Minister, you did say that that this is what students are supposed to do, you know, that it doesn't give us a right to take shortcuts and all, and that you prefer that we have to go through articles one by one. And like what I said earlier, like why do that when there's a more time-saving way? So is there any POIs?
Sure. So basically, do you agree that you prefer efficiency over quality?
I prefer in a way, you know what? Do we prefer efficiency over quality? Yeah, we prefer both. Our side supports both efficiency and quality. Like I said earlier, our way is more efficient, you know, by using these large language models. And like the alternative that I've suggested earlier, we can improve this quality by adding in, like students have the option to add in more research to it, not depending fully on these large language models. Look up other articles on the internet. We're not, like I said earlier, we're not fully depending on large language models. We try to utilize them and make sure that the students are and make sure that students get the best of both worlds, efficiency and quality. So, and also, it's a job of students, and okay, I guess like that is all for me. Yeah, I guess that's all for me. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Sister Alia. Now let's welcome the third speaker of the government, Brother Naufal, to the floor.
All right. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Chair, based on the two speakers brought by opposition, right, we can see what their case already looks like, right? And it's a very like inconsistent case, right? Or like they don't truly believe in what they're saying, because from what I could gather, right, basically what they want is more volume, right? They want people to be able to handle like 3 things at once, 5 things at once, because they can, right? Because there's an easier way to do it, so why not do all of them, right? But we've already told you that by using, in order for you to do all of these things in a like efficient way, then you have to go through like these faster solutions, right? And like even their speakers admit that why not just use a summarizer, right, to go through a novel or for some example, right? And before they did not engage whatsoever with the harms that we tried to bring up to you, right? We tried to tell you that when you go through these shortcuts, right, you miss all of the like important procedures or the important um, understanding key points of learning, right? For example, right, if you want to use the shortcuts, and I give you a very basic example, especially like in law, for example, right, when we have like tons of cases to read, we cannot use ChatGPT. We cannot use these summarizing bots because it's always inaccurate, right? They always miss the true point of the judgment. They always miss the exact reason why the judge decided on that particular matter. And that is the reason why every single lecturer, every single adult will tell you that you have to read the whole case for you to truly understand the principles applied in the case, right? That is the harm to be trying to tell you. That was the harm I tried to present to you, even in my argument, when I tried to tell you that their comprehension would be flawed until it's too late, right? When they do when the final exam, and it turns out they don't understand the principle at all, right? But yeah, let's talk about the clashes, right? So first, obviously, there was an issue with the mechanism, right? And I've already responded to them to their countermeasure, which is on how to provide guidelines. Even my first speaker tried to POI them to remind them about it, and there's still no response as to why exactly they're like teaching them about how to use ChatGPT is going to be like a foolproof measure that's going to materialize to all these benefits. How exactly it's possible that they're able to even teach them how to be an expert in using ChatGPT all of a sudden, right? And we also like took down their rebuttal towards our mechanism in saying that Google is like somehow a better alternative. We already told you no, Google and ChatGPT is completely different, does not apply to this debate whatsoever, right? Okay, now second clash, right, on whether or not having these lectures concurrently is important, right? So I'm going to give you like the main reason why exactly having lectures on top of ChatGPT doesn't really make a difference, right? Because understand that humans are incentive driven beings, right? There is every single incentive for you to want to use ChatGPT and nothing else, right? We won't opt for a harder way to do something if there's an easier alternative, right? And that's the very foundation of human innovation. Now, when we understand that there is an easier option, and especially considering that ChatGPT is free, we tell you that there is every incentive for the students to want to use ChatGPT, and there is zero incentive for them to want to suddenly want to analyze further or want to like dig deeper or use it only as a foundational step, as side opposition wants to push so much, right?
POI?
Sure.
Can you explain to us how can your side solve the problem of inclusivity? Because we believe that as our side can solve that problem. Thank you.
Okay, I don't understand what inclusivity you're talking about. Like, I don't understand which point you're trying to be inclusive, right? What are you trying to say? Okay, I don't understand your inclusivity point at all. But okay, let's move on to like the two main clashes, right? First clash, whether ChatGPT is harmful to students, right? What have we told you? We told you when students use ChatGPT, they don't understand anything of what they're learning. They're just using it to complete their assignments. They're using it to, delay on their assignments. And therefore, like that's why it's harmful to students. And the only point that they brought up repeatedly was about how it saves time and they can have a better balanced life, right? Understand that in their second speaker, this balanced life came from commitments outside of the university, right? If these commitments outside universities are voluntary, which they are, then like it is your own fault if you know you're drowning in assignments and you want to take on these extra committees, right? Extra commitments, right? If you know you already have like finals next week and then you want to join a basketball competition this week, we believe that has nothing to do with like being able to use ChatGPT or not, right? We tell you that people have their own abilities to manage their own time, to know what they're capable of carrying, and therefore, like, yeah, you cannot just simply blame not having ChatGPT for all your problems. Okay. Now, second clash on whether or not ChatGPT is harmful for the university, and we've given you like multiple reasons as to why the university itself is the best character that wants to like block ChatGPT. We told you how it harms the university in terms of how they would lose their reputation, they would lose their status of being a top university. We told you about we are giving you a clear analysis as to why that's true and what are the impacts of that happening. And there is again no responses being in by side opposition, right? They did not bother about the university. They only want to talk about the individuals, right? Now, so all in all, right, our side, what have we told you? We've told you that the university has a principal right to do this, right? And we've also told you about why exactly the performance of these students are likely to drop or will drop at the end of the day, right? Even if you are able to complete your assignments at a faster pace, we tell you when it comes to the final exam, you won't learn anything. You won't know anything. And the only rebuttal towards our whole case from their side is that these students will have like the sudden urge to want to dig deeper after asking ChatGPT of like a brief like overall outline of their topic, but again with no actual reasoning as to why that's likely to happen, especially considering that like these students, these are students who probably want to do other things better in their time, or they already have other commitments, right? So why there is no indication of a likelihood that they would want to use ChatGPT as a stepping stool rather than a whole solution, right? Yeah, I think just based on those reasons, just based on the fact that we actually prove that we harm students, we harm lecturers, we harm the universities, we prove that the education is tainted because of ChatGPT. Therefore, we win this debate. Proud to propose.
All right, thank you, Brother Naufal. Last but definitely not least, I welcome the third speaker from the opposition side, Brother Ibrahim Al-Habshi, to the floor. Please welcome.
Chair, I'm gonna phrase this in the most sexy way you ever heard, okay? I know for a fact Naufal Asagov uses LLMs. Okay, so now I'm gonna move on with my speech. Basically, government's whole case is that they lack academic credibility because you're just summarizing shit, and then you can't sorry for the vulgar words, okay, you're just summarizing stuff and you can't fact check stuff on our side. You can't like sort of have a proper tangible understanding of what is going through the ChatGPT's mind, etc., etc., etc. And we tell you that there are checks and balances in place. There are things that make it so that these ChatGPTs, these large language models, aren't totally the full source, the only source of information that we have. Okay, and I'll be explaining this in my speech. Okay, so onto a few rebuttals. First of all, state government mentions that LLMs go against the main purpose of the UD, and we tell you how is this the case? Universities, okay, they are profit oriented, they are research oriented, and we tell you that that isn't something that is omitted or avoidable on our side because we have checks and balances in place, such as we have plagiarism checkers such as Turnitin. We have these lecturers whose literal job is to check whether or not their students are doing their jobs correctly because that's what they're being paid for. But there is something that Naufal tries to put off as like, oh, they don't have the incentive to check each and every one of their students. That's literally their job, mate. Okay? There's something that you fail to understand under your side. You also mentioned that the purpose is to teach students how you become accountants, doctors, etc. But the thing is, more often than not, these students aren't totally relying on ChatGPT as a source of information. They're using it as a stepstone to achieve the end goal of finishing their assignments. They're not using it as a way to suddenly like, okay, ChatGPT, write me a court document in about 2,500 words. Or ChatGPT, write me an essay about pollution in about 5,000 words. You are omitting it. You are omitting human touch. You're omitting you're omitting academic credibility if you do that solely, but more often than not, students aren't doing it solely. They're doing it as a guidance way. They're using it, okay, ChatGPT, write a few words, and then I'll insert my own thoughts and opinions into that, and I'll submit that. Okay, so you are looking for it for information, but it is only a supplementary way of getting information. Much not dissimilar how. See, not dissimilar from how you are using your lecturers and other things that for sources of information. You're not only relying on one source, because what student would, okay? And if they do, they fail, and it is to their own detriment, because it's not too difficult to find out if something has been plagiarized or not, okay? So you also mentioned that we can't use it for
Before that,
okay, fine.
considering the fact that this ChatGPT is capable of doing your whole assignment, isn't that fact alone already like grounds for it to be banned?
Like I mentioned, you're able to get it. Check for plagiarism under Turnitin. Okay, there are checks and balances. The words will have been copied from a source of information somewhere. That's the whole benefit of what ChatGPT. ChatGPT is literally based on readily available information. It's not something that someone can randomly think about. They aren't able to predict what humans are going to be thinking about. What I'm thinking in my head, ChatGPT won't be able to know. But they will know something that I have said in the past, something that I've written in documents in the past. And because of that, they use that subset of information to cater their responses and their answers. So plagiarism is easily able to be detected in our world. It's not something that is like mutually exclusive. It's not like it's in fact it's beneficial, because in someone purely uses ChatGPT, the lecturers will be able to find out. Okay, so now I want to move on to my clashes. Two clashes. Sit down. Questions in this regard. First of all, whether LLMs void academic credibility, and secondly, whether LLMs harm universities and students. First of all, on to whether LLMs void academic credibility. Side opposition mentions that ChatGPT is not accurate because it doesn't follow disciplines. Well, we tell you this. First of all, when it comes to disciplines such as law, when it comes to disciplines such as Islam, where it's a very sit down. It's a very important matter, and that needs to have stringent and accurate information attached to it. People who are doing research for this, like for let's say for Islam, right? People who are doing research for this, literally on basis of their faith, are not allowed to do something that is inaccurate. Okay. It is on basis of their faith that they have a prerogative, they have a incentive to want to make sure that whatever they're doing is factually correct. So if they do use ChatGPT, for example, sit down. If they do use ChatGPT, for example, they will be able to they will be able to. They will fact check it and cross check it with other things. So that is that is something that is happens on our side. It's not mutually exclusive to your side. Moreover, ChatGPT and other LLMs provide warnings when you use them. It literally says at the bottom when you ask for like legal advice or like Islamic advice or whatever the case may be. It tells you that please do not resort to me for legal advice or whatever, because I'm just a large language model, okay? That literally in and of itself is an accountability measure for ChatGPT. Because if you do use that, well, you're just stupid, because you're not doing your own due diligence to make sure that your work is correct. People
Before
use it
6.
as a supplement. Fine.
Considering that your main mitigation is like based on these individuals' morality, right? That means you do concede to some extent that ChatGPT is harmful.
My main mitigation is that plagiarism models, anti-plagiarism software exists, such as Turnitin. It's not unto the morality of the student on its own. There are checks and balances. Lecturers do check whether or not this thing was made by ChatGPT or not. Okay, but anyways, whether or not LLMs void academic credibility, I've already handled that in my rebuttals and my short elaboration earlier. And now on to whether LLMs harm universities or students. Okay, so whoa, I cannot read my writing. Okay. You say that assignments are given to test comprehension. You say that everyone is forced to learn to use ChatGPT to catch up. I tell you that's a good thing, because every single new information, every single new thing that comes out forces people to try to do better. So because of that, there will be an increase of competitiveness for people to hone their skills, because they will be trying to hone themselves via using LLMs, and they will also trying to hone themselves via using supplementary academic information that is easily accessible. So for all those reasons, never been proud to oppose.
Thank you, Brother Ibrahim Al-Habshi. Now, It is time for the preparation for reply speeches. The time given for each team will be 1 minute. Debaters, please use the 1 minute to prepare your reply speeches. It is now the time for the reply speeches. The time given for the reply speeches is 4 minutes, starting first with the opposition. Please welcome the opposition summary speaker, Brother Adam Hakimi.
Adam Hakimi is Gov.
It's me, Malia.
Oh, all right, sorry. Please welcome Brother Wafi Izzuddin.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Mr. Speaker, the opposition side wants to repeat this again and again. LLM is a tool, okay? Large language model is a tool, okay? The person who used the tool is the one who's responsible. Just like both of the government side, both of the speaker are law student. Just like law is just a tool to provide justice. But in this context, ChatGPT is a tool to provide information. Our side not just can provide information, Mr. Speaker. LLM said that LLM not just can provide information, it can fact check the information. Just like I mentioned earlier, the learning differences and the inclusivity, and that is what the government's trying to oppose. That is the kind of world they want to live in. Because why? Because they're afraid that the human itself cannot do their job. Why? Because the deputy prime minister says that yes, they can do I'm sorry. The deputy prime minister says like this. It is the full-time student's job to submit the essay, and then the next sentence he said that the lecturer doesn't have time to use the plagiarism checkers. So it's actually contradicting. So I cannot understand what's the actual fight that is brought by the government. Plus the mechanism is weird. Okay, sorry. So I'm going to the point of clashes. So first, academic integrity and the technological advancement. The government side argue that banning these LNMs promote academic integrity by encouraging originality, like critical thinking and independent research. They repetitively said that the quality of the education will be down because of this technological advancement. Then I can simply say that since the beginning of Adam exists in the world, we are decreasing our quality. Why? Our quality of education. Why? Because in the 1900s, Einstein is so hard to find the theory of or to invent the theory of relativity. But because why? Because it's so hard for them to find the information. They have to go to the library. They have to go physically. They don't have computers back then. That is why, and that is what the government side are saying. That is the quality of education. The quality of education is basically going to the library physically, open the book, read the book fully, and then going and then going to the and then understand it fully, just like that. But our side says that summarizer is basically making you understand the whole information simply. Okay, simple may somehow reduce the quality. However, our side also mentioned that this information that will be given can be checked, can be marked by the lecturer itself in the context of student lecturer, and the government side repetitively only pointing out to the students how they don't care about how the staff can use the usage of ChatGPT as well, and the lecturer itself, and we can utilize the LLMs responsibly with proper citation and critical analysis to enhance the academic works. I mentioned how the LLMs work. The ChatGPT itself can provide citation, so they can read the article, journal article properly. Then they can understand it properly if they want. And second is the reliability and the question about the accessibility and inclusivity. Our side mentioning like this: banning the LLMs hinder the accessibility and inclusivity. Why? Because as I mentioned about the digital divide, no one knows about the existence of JSTOR. No one knows about the existence of IIUM or PAC library. Not no one lah, most of the people. But with ChatGPT exists, it can help them provide the information without knowing the existence of JSTOR or any academical website. So it helps them to understand, to help to get the information. And to conclude, if you want a world where inclusivity and accessibility and a proper and the adaptation of technological advancement has been accepted, go for the opposition side. Thank you.
I would like to thank first speaker for the summary and welcome the last speaker of the government, Brother Adam Hakimi, to sum up for their team and debate as a whole. Please welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the judge. I can say this only. If you truly believe that morality and guidelines can control people, why do we have laws penalizing death? Why? Because we cannot rely on morality and guidelines only. We must codify it as law. And that is why the government has always asked how you want to regulate this, and that you didn't answer. And let me say this, the point of contention of our clashes is that you are saying that the students can rely on their morality. But we are saying that we as the government wants to uphold morality and integrity. So I want the House today to balance which side is trying to truly bring about the change and to secure morality on their side. Because let's be honest, like I've said just now, guidelines and hoping being a wishful thinker is not going to solve your problems. Now I'm going to rebut your whole case that the ChatGPT can somehow be regulated by fact checkers and plagiarize checkers. Naufal has mentioned student knows how to bypass it. Naufal has mentioned about your side has mentioned about Quillbot. You know, the students can use Quillbot and then change the generator that ChatGPT has generated, and then the fact checkers cannot check it anymore because it is different. And because of that, fact checkers, like Naufal has mentioned, is bypassed. And that is your whole case being summarized and destroyed. So I'm going to rebut your argument of a valuable resource. Everything is a valuable resource, but how do you want to use it? You are saying it is a tool, but in education, in the context of education, is it a tool or is it a mechanism for you to bypass the system? That is the question, and that is what the government has always pushed. That we are trying to ban it because it cannot be regulated anymore. It has advanced, but Naufal has mentioned it's advanced more than we can regulate, and that is why the government asks how do you want to regulate it, and every single regulations that are giving have been rebutted by the government. and they are saying that it can save time. My deputy prime minister has said, it is you don't have time because you have commitments, and it is your choice. And the third one, we can let ChatGPT set the foundation. How? I hammer, we as a government hammer it. How? How can they set a foundation when you can't possibly know that the students are following morality or not? So we are following the government side, the government's aim, that we are trying to to not endorse or use ChatGPT in university, because we have to prove that it's harmful for university students, which we have proved by our arguments. Our three arguments, that is, university have a principal obligation to ban the use of ChatGPT among university students. Our second argument, it reduces the overall performance and quality of the university. And our third argument, that is, the true capabilities will and comprehension of the students are hidden until it's too late, which is proved by Snowfall by mentioning the exams on which they doesn't understand the concepts that they are trying to solve in the exam. So that is why we as a government wants to ban GPT language models and such as GPT in university. I rest my case at the queue.
Thank you to all the speakers for the great debate. Judges, you are given 5 minutes to fill in the marking form, and then we'll continue with your verbal adjudications.
Jefferson, are you there?
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify that Team E is in opposition and Team B is Gov. Is that correct?
All right. Yes.
Okay, but on the ballot paper, it's flipped. Like it's switched.
All right. Team E is the government side, and Team D, yes, is the opposition side.
Thank you.
Dearest Judge, you have a maximum of 15 minutes to give your verbal adjudications. The floor is now yours, dear Judge.
Give me like 5 more minutes. I am having some difficulties on my end with the docs. Hello, friends. Just wanted to do a quick roll call before we get forward. Is everybody from Gov here?
Yes.
Up,
Yes.
are you? Okay, great. Right. So this is how I want to structure my OA, and I'm really sorry I'm not turning my camera on. I am still in my pajamas. But the way that I want to structure my OA is I'll start off with some general comments, and then I'll give you the verdict, and then I'll move on to justifying why my decision went as such. All right. My timer. So I thought that this was a very average debate, like just across the board, which is concerning given UADC and all of that jazz. But yeah, there are just generally like three main points that I probably would want to like point out as like both sides could probably benefit for this. Firstly, the engagement was incredibly subpar. It was a lot of deflection and like a lot of minute examples that were being used in the rebuttal, which I don't think is the most productive way to go about it, because either side could just simply say that, like, look, that is an exception, not an example. So I think there was a certain necessity on both sides to tell me why what you're saying is very likely to happen. And I think that that was pointed out by certain teams. They were talking about like what are the incentive structures, what are the capacity structures, right? I think these are things that needed to be fully fleshed out to like make the debate make sense. Yeah, just like from next time onward, like whenever you're making like assumptions, you might want to like think about, yeah, all of that. Secondly, like I enjoyed the fact that there was a bit of a principle back and forth throughout like the entire debate that like look at how ChatGPT compares in like comparison to like Google or Quillbot or other like language models or like other ways that students have been using to like cheat on their exams or like cheat on their academics. And then it's a shame that it was such a wash and like both teams kind of gave up on it at some point. But in the future, if you're going to be doing that, I would highly suggest like not just saying that like this is similar to say Google, but also like pointing out reasons why it's similar to Google. It makes that entire claim a lot harder to break down by the other team, which means your principle manages to stay intact for much longer in the debate. Thirdly, and this is constructive, of course, right? Because we haven't gotten into like OA yet. I think that this debate lacked from like this POV of how the current job market is shaping up and how it's changing, right? Employers currently look for ChatGPT skills. They look for good prompt like production skills and whether or not you're able to use LLMs, like these large language models, in order to like complete certain tasks. Because at the end of the day, you're like doing uni in order to get a job. And in that job, they expect you to be efficient. How are you efficient? Employing various tools such as ChatGPT. And I think there could have been an entire discussion on like how if you're using ChatGPT in university, sure you might be cheating the system, sure you might not be getting the best possible education, but you are learning how to like properly deal with an AI large language model, which becomes a very valuable skill later on in life. And in time you are taught to like properly refine it, right? Like you learn to like bypass all these plagiarism checks, you learn how to like bypass certain systems, and that could be incredibly valuable in the future. But like it wasn't brought up in the debate, so I can't judge the debate based on that. Anyway, those were my general comments. And this OA is going to be a bit unhinged because I'm like incredibly tired. But before I move on to justifying the verdict, I ended up giving the debate to side government on a very narrow margin. Yeah, and this has nothing to do with Nova being my teammate. Yeah. Right. Somebody asking for personal feedback. Okay. Right. So then what happened in this debate? We had, let's start with OP. So OP has a number of things that they tried to push in this debate. Firstly, there was this principle comparison on like how it's like the same as any other like language model or any other tool that you're using. I don't think it stood until the end of the debate. It was just like a really brief back and forth, and then both sides kind of gave up on it, which I think is a shame because there was something to be proven at the end of it. That falling through was not to their favor. Secondly, efficacy. And I think that they win on this, the fact that it is, as a matter of fact, efficient. However, and I think this was pointed out by government, that what is the trade-off here? You can't just simply say that, look, it's efficient, hence good, hence all the other harms don't matter. There needs to be a certain trade-off, which was also promptly pointed out by GAP when they say, like, do you prioritize efficacy? Let me just yeah, like, do you prioritize efficacy or do you prioritize like quality education? And then like I feel like that was not really engaged to later on, which is weird. Because like that would be going into constructives. Sorry. But yeah, like I can't really credit efficacy if it's not being compared to anything else. It's just a standalone benefit at that point in time in the debate. Thirdly, and I really feel like side op could have won this debate if they managed to like full on hammer down on that accessibility point. And I think this was mentioned by the PM when they talked about like how, look, a lot of people with learning disabilities, a lot of people who are not neurotypical greatly benefit from things like ChatGPT. I think that was the one thing from side opposition that stood until the end of the debate. It's just such a shame that it wasn't like talked about further in the debate, or like it wasn't being compared to the other arguments, or like there was no certain like framing as to why these particular individuals matter more than everybody else who is involved. Because it is true, there's a lot of people who struggle with learning disabilities and a lot of people who are born with things like ADHD and ADD. For these people, the task of like sitting down with like a whole bunch of articles or like an entire law book, going through the entire thing, studying the entire case, and then attempting to understand what the fuck is happening is incredibly hard, right? So like large language models such as this, which manage to summarize these things, are actually like incredibly helpful for these people. These people have a right to education, and I feel like these are things that could have actually like driven that point home. However, it was not done, which is why it was really hard for me to like credit them too much for it. However, it was like this and a bunch of other responses that I'll be getting into in a bit that made the margin as small as it was. So then what does Gov give us? Gov says roughly about the three things as well. Like they talk about how firstly, ChatGPT is not foolproof, it is not accurate, and it cannot like give you the results that you need if you want to actually perform well, even on your assignments. And I buy into that. Op says that, look, most people aren't going to be copy pasting from ChatGPT and just putting it on their assignment. Most people are going to be using it for an outline only. And if they are copying, then that's their loss because they would be caught by the plagiarism checker or they would be held accountable by the lecturer and whatnot. But then I think like when I juxtapose that line of argumentation to what the PM says and the DPM says about like how the results of these students are very much tied to the reputation of the university, and with one of their mechanisms being that like, look, you rely on ChatGPT for your assignments, and I think they did like a fairly decent job at telling me like how these assessments are meant to affect students, how these assessments are meant to help your lecturers be able to assess whether or not like you are actually paying attention in class, whether or not you're actually understanding stuff in class. And what like the fact that a lot of the times lecturers use these assessments to understand where the rest of the class is at, and therefore will like do things like supplementary lessons or like extra classes, workshops, and XYZ in order to help these students, right? So then like if none of those things are happening, these students are probably getting bad grades because they cannot rely on these technology when they are going into like their final exams and stuff, which means that they're most likely to fail, which means the reputation of the university is, as a matter of fact, tarnished, right? Because like you have a whole bunch of students who are like taking a shit ton of time in order to graduate. I'm not referring to myself 100%. But yeah, like I thought that back and forth, while it was enjoyable, at the end of the day, I had to lean towards Gov because of it. Secondly, Gov talks about the reputation of the university. Yeah. My only issue with that is that I'm not sure why the university and its reputation is a major stakeholder in this debate. But luckily for Gov, Op never really bothered to point that out. That like, why do I give a shit about what the university thinks or what happens to the university? If the university reputation drops, like, why is that important? Because I would personally like go in and like talk about how like, look, universities are businesses. They don't matter. They don't care about us. What matters is people. What matters is students. Their education, their ability to gain a degree is so much more important than any university or their reputation. They're like a dime a dozen. There's a shit ton of them everywhere. However, each individual student has like a lot of potential in order to like do things to change the world. So then, yeah, I'm just not sure that wasn't engaged to, which also kind of played into like the first issue and why Gov kind of I lean towards Gov because of it. Thirdly, they talk about there was this back and forth, right, about how the large language model is going to be used and all of that. And so you have Gov telling me that, look, people are not going to be using it well. People are going to be using it in a way that is very inefficient, not inefficient, but like very stupid. Like they're not going to edit it or they're not going to like do anything to fix it. And they're going to rely 100% on it. They're not actually going to learn anything. They're going to copy paste. And then Op comes up and then Op tells me that, no, most students are sensible enough to be able to understand that this is meant to be a tool and not the answer. Most students read the fine print on a fucking website. I don't think, I'm not sure how much I buy that, but I bought that. Like, look, a lot of students are going to like be able to understand that you shouldn't be copying off of it, like in a way that is very detectable. And a lot of them are just going to be using it as an outline. A lot of them are going to be using their own originality and like produce the final product that they're going to be submitting because they have and yeah, and then and I think at that point, Ibrahim says, what is the incentive for them to be using it as an outline? What is the incentive structure that they have to like not follow like just yeah, all of that. To which I think the response, although it came late, like I think it came in whip at some point, they talk about how, look, they're going to use it the right way because they have an incentive to pass. They have an incentive to not get caught, which is why they do all of this stuff to like get past the plagiarism checker and all of that stuff. So then like I'm for this particular issue of whether or not you can rely on morality, it was a wash to leaning towards Op, right? So then I have accessibility and inclusivity from Op, which is not carried through throughout the rest of the debate. And this entire idea of like students knowing better from Op, which are like somewhat strong. However, like when I'm looking at stakeholder analysis, I am leaning towards Gov. When I'm looking at like this weird stakeholder of like the reputation of the university, I am leaning towards Gov. But also when it comes to like burden fulfillment, I sincerely thought that there was a burden on Op in order to like prove to me why keeping this around is actually going to be beneficial. Because when it comes to motions like this, it's not like Op is not supposed to simply run a negative case. They're supposed to also like run something positive. And I felt like that was largely lacking. Like I am still not sure why, aside from like efficacy and being able to finish your degree faster, like although that was the letter wasn't said, like efficacy and like being able to learn more. I'm just not sure what benefits are being offered by keeping ChatGPT around. I think there was a lot that could have been done in that regard, but it just simply did not come up in the debate. So at the end of the day, I had to like measure up how many lines of argumentation were attempted by each side and how many lines of argumentation were actually like established by the end of the debate. Something else that I thought that Gov does fairly well is in terms of like just general engagement. They talk about how like all of the benefits that were like somewhat present in the op case, I felt like Gov did a fairly decent job in being able to tell me that, like, look, these are things that are not worth it when you look at the grand scheme of things, when you look at like the quality of education, when you look at whether or not these are students who are actually able to be functioning members of society and be able to be experts within their own fields. Yeah, I really hope that makes sense. If you have questions, please shoot.
I don't have any questions.
I'll DM you on WhatsApp later.
And but like the call isn't shady, is it? It's just like this entire debate was so lacking in like just general engagement and all
Yeah,
that.
makes sense. Makes sense.
All right. Thank you guys so much for the debate. If you guys would like personal feedback, please reach out to me on WhatsApp. Yeah, I'm still awake until like 1 p.m. So
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Tasmia.
Anyways.
Whoa.
Wait, let Taufik.
but you guys, like it was so bad. I have actual classmates who directly copy paste from ChatGPT onto their slides. Like they don't even bother to remove the in summary part. Like,
Oh my
they just
Lemah.
and it's just so annoying.
At least adalah. At least they don't have the as an LLM.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, all right. I go.
All right.
Alright, thank you.